Hey guys.
So today or yesterday at Goodwill, I saw a yellow flash in the window, and it turned out to be a road bike. And I couldn't believe it because you never see road bikes there, and I'm kind of a roadie, so it was a big deal. And the I know it looks like a fixer-upper, but it's, to me, unbelievably cool. And how much did I end up paying for this whole thing? So steel tubes, two wheels and two tires, and other stuff ended up being $19.99. And so I don't know exactly anything about this bike just because it looks like it was sprayed before by someone. But one of the things you look for in steel bikes is like the quality of the lugs and how much, when they put it together, how were they artsy with it, and did they kind of have some design flair or something. And in this case it looks like they did. And so these lugs are pretty cool. 20 bucks for a bike in today's money, at least, is a steal. And I just think it's so cool. This bike's probably from the 80s, I would guess, just based on the fact that it's steel. And these brakes and derailleurs are from name brands that I've never heard of. But these down tube shifters do say Shimano on them, which is a positive aspect to have, I suppose. It does have a triple chainring, which I'm probably going to change to a double. And it's got a rear mech that I have no idea what it is, as well as a front mech that I don't know what that is. This is called a braze-on, so this is not a braze-on, this is a clamp-on. It physically clamps onto the down tube. Or this is called the seat tube. Seat tube, top tube, down tube, head tube, and then these are called the chainstays. And these are the cable pull brakes. It's pretty uncommon to see anything today that has cable pull brakes, just because they have weaker stopping power, and it's just really not the same. The chain is very rusty, and it's gonna get replaced. I can do that. I've got all these tools here and stuff I can do it with. This is a classic pre-loved Brooks Brothers saddle. So the leather is very, very thick and hard, and it's already been broken in, which is kind of cool. So you just get on it and hopefully it fits and it works. It's got a steel fork, which could probably use some polishing up if I wanted to make the bike look nicer, but I do like the patina. I think it adds something to this bike. I think so with these down tube shifters is that they are a bit they're you don't see them as often anymore because everything's indexed now. So I have my other bike I can show you guys later, but with these down tube shifters, you do the indexing every time you move them, and there's an infinite number of positions you can have these things in. So this one is for the front mech or front derailleur, which controls which chain the chain is on. So while you're riding and you move this one, you can change which big chainring you're in, and then this lever here on the right operates the rear mech, so you can change which cog you're in on the rear wheel. So while this thing's connected, it makes the chain jump into a different cog, which also affects the gear ratio. The whole point of the gear ratio is just, per pedal stroke, how much does the rear wheel spin. So if you have, so the tallest gear, we call it the tallest gear, meaning per rotation on the pedals, how many times or how much does the, and this is, you should probably use radians, but you know, how many rotations do you get out of the rear wheel. And so to be in your tallest gear, what you'd want is the big chainring up top and the small cog in back. So this one connected to the big chainring. So when you're going down a hill or you're on a flat with a good backwind, tailwind, and you can be cranking out high speed, that's the time when you want to be in your tallest gear. And so the way it works is just a rule of multiples. So your big chainring here has, let's call it 50 teeth. So every pedal rotation you've taken up 50 chain links worth. And then if your small cog back here has 10 teeth, that means that per rotation at the front we get 5 rotations on the back. And I don't know, I just think this thing is so cool. And we've also got, you know, the front brake here, also cable pull. These things are, yeah, it's definitely worn, but it's just got a look to it that I like. Also got the stem. So these stems are also not seen much today, also just because it's modern bikes use different types of headsets. This is called a threaded headset. So these actually thread into the frame itself, which it's I mean, it works. So if it's not broken, don't fix it. But I may go to a threadless headset just because it would probably be easier to service the bike later on. And then these are the cable housings for the rear brake and front brake. And the pads look like they're in pretty good condition. The thing we look for in these cranks, so as a whole it's called the cranks, and then we have a bottom bracket here. The bottom bracket is the bearings inside that actually help the cranks rotate freely. And so if you can't hear that, but when we rotate it we do feel a bit grittiness, so that means we're probably going to need to replace these cranks or at least repack the bearings, as well as in these pedals you do feel a little roughness. The other thing we look for is there play. And so if you can see that there is lateral play, I hope lateral is the correct term, but you do not want to see that. So that's another indication that the preload on these bearings needs to be increased. And another thing we look for in gear cables is how frayed they are. So we can see that this one is getting frayed, so that definitely needs to be replaced, as well as this rear mech cable should also be replaced. And yeah, there's just, I think this is not the first time the bike was painted. Looks like it used to be some kind of turquoise or teal, and there is lots of rust, but I mean, it's an honest bike that shows it's lived a good life, and I want to keep it going. And if you're wondering why they put tape here, whatever previous owner had this thing, it's to keep the chain from scratching up the paint. So it may have been loved at one point in its life, but I'm gonna love it some more. And I just think it's so cool. Yeah, these Brooks Brothers saddles are pieces of art, in my opinion. They get worn in over time, and when you use them on rainy days is the best time to use them, just because that's when you can really get them. It's almost like a set of leather shoes breaking them in. There's something so nice about the leather conforming to your body. Just so weird. But yeah, these Brooks Brothers saddles are very, very nice. Or Brooks saddles. And yeah, so it's steel frame. So we've got these lugs that attach all the steel tubes together, with the clamp on front mech, which it might replace it or not, it might not. Brakes definitely probably should replace. And then the bar wrap here is seen better days, I think, as you can see just by all the wear, but it's cool. I don't know, I think this stuff's really cool. And then so I'll just give you a little overview of these wheels here. I mean, they come pre-deflated. I don't want to even think about how old these things are, but it's an honest bike, honest wheel set as well. So this is a 5-speed, and so if you go to a bike dealership, they would sell this to you calling it a 15-speed because you've got 3 big chain rings connected to 5 cogs. So 3 times 5. This wheel set is a bit interesting. It is a 700C, which is the industry standard name for the standard road bike wheel set. They do have, I think, 650C is the other size. It is a bit smaller in diameter. I don't use those. They're meant for triathlon bikes that you want to be as low to the ground as possible and stuff like that. But 700C is just the industry standard. Guys in Tour de France use it all the time. Then the weird thing about this wheel set though is that it has a Schrader valve on it, and it's 700C, which is kind of untypical to see. Usually we see Presta valves. Presta is the type with the little screw on it that you just undo, and then you connect it, and then you screw it back down. I can show you an example of that later, but I mean, it's, and then this is the braking surface here, so that's where the pads would grip onto. It is important to make sure that the pads remain in contact with the rim, because over time, or for whatever reason, they can get a little crooked, and in those cases, the problems we run into are your brake pads will touch the tire or completely miss the rim, and when they touch the tire, it can cause you to get flats just because it'll heat up the tire or wear through it, and it wears into the inner tube, and these inner tubes are made of very thin rubber, so it's very easy to cause flats to occur that way. So flats are no fun, believe me. Sound like Trump now. So yeah, it's just a really cool bike, cool wheel set, and came pre-loved with lots of rust, and I just think it's so cool. And yeah, I might do an update on where this bike ends up, how it ends up turning out, and yeah, I mean, for 20 bucks, it's a freaking steal, just because if I go anywhere else, 20 bucks in a bike shop, just go to a bike shop and see what 20 bucks gets you. It might get you a bottle cage or these sets of pedals. So even if this whole thing ends up being completely worthless, it was still, in my opinion, bargain of the century. But yeah, that's, I think, a good overview of the bike. If you ask roadies like me what kind of bikes to use, everyone's kind of on carbon fiber these days, or aluminum, mostly carbon. The thing with steel, and it's becoming just a lost art, and fewer people are using it, but apparently there's been called a renaissance or a new appreciation for steel in bike frames, just because it is a great material. It is a little bit heavier, but it's just got a life to it, as my dad would say, that you just don't get with other frame type materials. One of the slightly more gruesome practices people will perform on steel frame bikes is, if they wanted to upgrade the number of speeds they have on their rear cog to an 8 or 9 or 10, you can actually, because steel has a little bit of give to it, you'll see guys take 2x4s and they will physically bend out the rear chainstays just to get more distance in here so that they can fit more speeds on the rear cog, because that's what people do. that's the more modern approach. You want to have, currently we're at 11 speeds on our rear. Cassettes is the term for this whole thing. Each one of these is a cog. And then this wheel set's probably, not quite sure what I'm going to do with it. It's probably going to get upgraded, just because it is a little, I'd like to have more speeds on this, on the rear. And then I'm going to take some off on the front chainring, just because it's a good way of minimizing how much the chain has to bend when you're shifting gears and stuff like that. But yeah, I think this bike looks good. Really happy I got it, regardless of how everything turns out. I just love bikes, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, thanks for watching, and take care.